Hi, this is Sean here. I would like to go through this template and just explain how loan amortization works. Loan amortization essentially is the process of paying your property off, where there is a principal and interest portion on the loan. So I'm just going to explain the differences between the two and obviously how they will be applied practically. This template you can purchase and download and use yourself. Um, this template has been designed to illustrate one of two things. One, you'll be able to see how much interest you can save and the reduction in your loan by making extra monthly payments or lump sum payments on an ad hoc basis, or a combination of the two. In other words, you can put in extra monthly payments and then you can dump in additional lump sums into your bond. This will be done through an access facility, and by doing so, you're essentially paying the interest off at a faster rate because the principal debt will always remain R1,000,000. And then what happens is you essentially pay the property off before the term. So in this case, I'm just going to use R1,000,000 loan. If the property was bought for, let's say, 1.2 million, and you put down a deposit and the amount that you're financing is 1 million, just put the loan amount in here. I'm currently working on the prime lending rate, 11.75%, 20-year term. Payments are monthly. Generally speaking, with loans, they calculate it as end mode, which means that the loan would take payment at the end of the month, not the beginning. There is a difference when you work out the payment of the installment, but the banks work on end mode as a default. I've already put a few banks in here. This is the most common ones: Rand Merchant, First National, ABSA, Nedbank, SA Home Loans, Investec. There might be other banks as well, such as Mercantile, but in most cases, these are the ones that you would get finance from. But this is important. It's just to drop down here. So the first thing we need to look at here is, what is the monthly payment to finance R1,000,000 loan based on 11.75 20-year term and obviously monthly payments. So this is the installment here of 10,837. This is the amount that you need to finance or pay every month to finance this loan. So if you take this amount here and it's 20 years, so 20 times 12 would get you to the number of payments you need to make, which is going to be 240 payments. So you have to make 240 payments of 10,837 to be able to finance R1,000,000 loan. Now, this is the principal debt. The R1,000,000 is what's been paid to essentially the purchaser, the seller. The purchaser pays the R1,000,000 for whatever asset they're buying. So as I said before, let's say the property was 1.2. He's put down the deposit. The deposit goes to the seller, and the R1,000,000 gets financed through the banks. The banks pay him the balance of the R1,000,000. You now need to pay the bank for the R1,000,000 that they've given you, and this is the amount you need to pay per month, which includes the principal portion and also the interest, 11.75%, which is payable monthly over 20 years. So if you take this amount here times by 240 payments, you would have paid a total amount of 2,600,897 rounded off to finance this R1,000,000 loan. So that's obviously quite a lot of interest, and the interest payment is over here, 1,600,897. And quite simply, that just simply means that this person is going to be paying close to 1.6 times what their original principal debt was to finance this property, which is obviously quite substantial. This is rounded off. I have removed the decimal, so if you do calculate it yourself, there might be a slight variance there, just simply because there's rounding taking place. But generally speaking, if you were to do the calculation, you should get exactly the same. So that's the first thing we need to note here, is that there's interest of 1.6 million over a 20-year term. Had this been a 30-year term, installment would come down. However, your interest that you need to pay would be a lot higher. So it's 10,094 versus 10,837. So you can see over here that there is a slight variance in the monthly installment, but the interest makes a substantial difference. In other words, the longer the bond term, the more interest the bank is going to make off of you, which is obviously quite substantial when you consider that if this is a primary residence and you get a 30-year loan, this is how much you pay in the bank to fund £1 million property, or £1 million loan in this case, which is a lot. It is a lot of money that need to factor in. I'm going to put it back in 20 years, and I'm going to now show you how the amortization works. So now let's say a person is now looking to take out this loan. They've agreed to 10,837 as the finance terms, because the bank has come back and said, we'll give you 11.75% a 20-year term. The person accepts the approval in principle, and the final grant is given, and that's the installment. Just note also, in most cases, is a service fee, which is about 69 Rand, which has generally added onto that amount. So when you get your approval in principle, just have a look and see what that is, because that will fall away when the loan comes to an end. In other words, you stop making payments. But in this case, let's just work on the 10,837. And let's say now this is the amortization schedule now, where you can see the £1 million balance. This is the first payment that has come off. We've said that it starts on the 31st of May. And this is the first payment. So this is the breakdown of the payment. So the payment is broken down as a principal of 1,045 Rand that goes towards the actual £1 million, which is a small portion, and a large portion is interest. So generally what happens is that you pay the bank interest first. The bank wants interest. And as you can see over here, the principal amount is relatively small compared to the interest. And as time goes by, you get to a stage where your principal portion is higher than your interest portion of the payment, which is, just remember, the payment is exactly the same. And really towards the end, you start to see the interest. So the interest will always be there. However, it just the distribution of interest starts to reduce as your principal portion of the loan is paid off. So if you sum this all up, in other words, this should equal £1 million. If you add all this up, that'll equal to £1 million. And if you add all this up, it'll equal to 1.6, which gets you over here. And this is the accumulated interest over here. So this is the interest here. It gets to your 1.6. There's the amount over there. Bear in mind, I've just said it's rounded off here. So let's say a person doesn't want to have 240 payments. They don't want to pay 1.6. Let's say their budget was 15,000 a month. So they go put in 4,500 Rand extra into their bond every month. Let's say they've got the full ability to do so. If they put 4,500 Rand monthly over and above the 10,837, they're going to shorten their bond term by 11.25 years. And that means they're only going to have a bond for 8.75 years. So that is, it's quite a large reduction. The total interest savings is just under $1 million. It's 999,648. And the reason for this is because the 10,837 plus the 4.5 means the total payment is 15,337. And your principal portion now is increased so that you can actually pay the £1 million a lot sooner. In other words, this £1 million will be settled before 240 payments. And that really is what makes the difference. And that's what makes the difference when you are looking to settle the bond a lot sooner. Now, obviously, 4,500 Rand is a lot of money. So let's just maybe work on 2,000 Rand. We'll make it a bit more affordable. 2,000 Rand will reduce it by 7.67%. Yes, sorry. However, this particular person might have, let's say, lump sums from bonuses or tax rebates or whatever. And let's say now they want to go and put in on an ad hoc basis, let's say 30,000 Rand over here. They want to go and put maybe further in the future. Because obviously, just bear in mind, this is all planning. By doing that, they will then reduce the loan to they reduce it by 9 years. So it's a 10-year loan. So the point is that this person can hypothetically plan a scenario of making extra payments monthly or ad hoc payments as a lump sum or a combination of the two. So if I take this off, and let's say this person has an access facility, and after the first year or so, they're going to put in 200,000 Rand into this loan. Okay. It doesn't reduce the principal to 800,000. What it does is it increases the principal portion, as you can see over here. And as a result, it's going to reduce your loan by 8 years because you're now paying off the principal. It doesn't reduce it. So the installment comes down. Just note, installment always remains the same when you do this exercise. You are looking to pay the bond off sooner, but you still have the same finance terms of 10,837. The only difference is that you're looking to pay it off before the 240 payments to reduce your interest, which you can see over here is the savings. What this template can also do, let's say this person wants to reduce the principal debt so it brings down the installment. That's where you can use this calculator. So this calculator is now applicable if you want to now reduce your principal portion, which is the R1,000,000, by putting extra lump sum payments into your property. So basically what you would do in this case is you'll go to the bank and you'd either make an extra lump sum payment into the bond. And this is not going into the access facility. This is going to the bank because the bank then recalculates your outstanding bond, which I'm going to show you now, to negotiate your interest rate. Let's say you've got better finance terms or you've got more loans with them and now you want to negotiate because they've got other business from you. You can do that. And lastly, let's say you want to go to the bank and say, I want to reduce my loan term to a lower number of years outstanding. I'm going to show you quickly what that means. So in the first example, we'll use 200,000 again. Let's say 12 months has passed. So 12 months has accrued on this bond. So you can see here that the accumulated interest of the 12 months is calculated over there, 116,801. This is an independent calculator. So if you're going to put this at 14, it's going to work out at 14, put it on 27. And you can also do it between periods. So let's say it's between 2 and 12 or 5 and 12. I'll do it for you. But I'm just, for this exercise, I just want to show you practically how this works. The total principal is only been 11,243. So if you add up all the principals over here, you'll see that it only adds up to 13,243, which when you compare it to the interest over the 12-month period, I'm sure you'll agree that you're paying a substantial amount of more interest than you are in the principal. And that's why you might want to decide to reduce your principal through this exercise. So what you would then do is the installment is still 10,837. Your outstanding bond after the first 12 months is 986,557. And where you get that, it's just through a separate calculation, but it is essentially 986. There it is, 986.5. So this is after the first 12 months. You've got 222 payments left because now you're taking 240 minus the number of payments that have occurred, which is 12. And what you then do is you're going to then say to the bank, I've got 200,000. I've got 228 payments left. I would like to recalculate my principal portion of my loan. So instead of being 986, because remember, 986 of the million that's come down, you're injecting another 200,000 Rand, which is going to the bank, and they recalculate installments to 8,640 or 41 if you round it off. So that's your new installment based on the number of payments left, which is 228. So you haven't reduced your loan. What you've done is you've reduced your installments because you've recalculated the principal portion of the outstanding loan. So that's very important, is that you can do it on one of two ways. As I said here, save interest here, keep the installment the same, but reduce the term, or you keep the term the same, but you reduce the principal portion, they recalculate the installment. The second option is you've got the same outstanding loan of the 12 months, or principal portion, I should say, and there's over here. You've got 228 payments left, but now let's say you got it granted 11.75 and you want to drop it down by 1%. You want to go to the bank and say, I want to drop my interest rate you've given me by 1% for the reasons already mentioned. The bank says, okay, we will grant you 10.75%. This is what the installment's going to be. Now, this is just purely going to the bank and negotiating better interest rates. There's not much real work from your side that's required. You just want to see what the impact's going to be based on the number of payments. Doesn't have to be after 12 months. You might be after 24 months, 2 years. It's going to work out the outstanding loan of the 2 years, 216 payments, so 240 minus 24 payments. The point being is that you can use this to model an example where you can negotiate. Let's say you've got high interest rates now for whatever reason, and you want to negotiate. You can actually see the impact it will make on your installment. Just note, this is independent from this calculator. So it's not going to take this amount here and rebalance it into this. This is just purely to show you the impact of reducing your principal portion, reducing your interest rate, and then the last one here is reducing your bond term. So if 12 months is paid, there's 19 years left. And obviously this is the outstanding bond again, as we've shown before. The difference is you want to go to the bank and say, I want to pay this bond off in 12 years. 19 is left because 1 year has passed. However, I want you to recalculate the installment as if I had 12 years left because I'd like to pay this off sooner. So then you would then have the 12,811 Rand as the new installment, and that's now recalculated on 12 years. In other words, when you get your bank statement from which institution, they've got your outstanding balance. They will show you on their amortization schedule that you'll only have 12 years left, and this is the new installment. Because they're also going to have a loan amortization schedule similar to this. The difference is that the bank's going to have the interest rates per month, because this one just basically models in a flat interest rate across, because obviously we don't know what the interest rate's going to be in the future. So it's very difficult to forecast that. Currently, it's 11.75%. Prior to COVID-19, it was 10%, around 10 to 10.25%, but it didn't really go anywhere above that prior to 2017. So you can sort of get an average, but in reality, the banks will have monthly interest rates because they'll also inform you if there's a change in the interest rates through a letter or notification saying to you that the variable interest has adjusted because of the repo rate. The primary rate is therefore done this, and if you've got a prime minus or prime plus on your loan, it'll then impact it accordingly. Of the two options, personally, I would rather have an access facility and put money into the access facility, because then you can access the money later down the line. And if you put money into the access facility, so as I said before, let's use the same example. After 12 months, it's going to put in 200,000, right? It's going to save 890,000 interest, but you can still take this money out. he can access the 200,000. Installment's still the same. It's just that he's now saved the interest that he would have paid by putting that money into the access facility. That money can save you an interest if it's a primary residence, but at the same time, it is accessible should you need it in an emergency. So one is to weigh up the pros and cons. Once you've given the money to the bank on this principal, this example here, you can't get it back because they recalculated your principal debt. But again, if it's a large property and you want to pay it off as soon as possible, you might just decide to do that. This one I think is probably the riskiest, because if you negotiate to reduce your bond term, you put yourself into a contractual obligation of a much higher installment. I would rather have this installment here and put the equivalent in there. So it's 2,811. Yes, it's going to bring it down. So it's 10-year term. As you can see, the example here, 1 year's passed. You've now reduced it to a 12-year outstanding loan. But if you put 2,811 from inception into your bond, you would see that you'd reduce it by 9 years anyway. So personally, I would rather go the route of putting 2,811 Rand into the access facility. Just note, when you speak to the banks, always just explain to them what you'd like to do, so that you're putting the money into the access facility on a monthly basis or an ad hoc. It's not necessarily going to grow in value anymore, and it's not going to get any growth on it. So in other words, instead of making a monthly payment, you might just say, okay, well, I'm going to save 2,811 Rand and put it into my bond once a year. Look, just bear in mind, if you do put it in monthly, you are probably going to save more interest. And obviously it's going to be 2,811 times by 240 payments. That's a huge commitment from your side. So again, it really comes down to personal preference. But again, if a person wants to pay the bond off a lot sooner, that would be the way to do it. The last thing I want to show here, which I've also included, is if you've got a loan of, let's say, R1 million, the property purchase price was 1.2. So you put down a 20,000 deposit, which went to the seller. Total repayments is already calculated over here. I'll just turn this off quickly. Just want to show you something. So total payments is 2.6 million, which is over here. The term is 20 years or 240 payments. So if this property was bought for 1.2 million and the total payments over 20 years is 2.6, this property would have had to have grown at 3.4% per year to have the same market value as 2.6 million after 20 years. So in other words, I've left out the levies and rates and all of that because I'm purely looking at the loans here, right? So what I'm saying is that if the property is, you've had to pay in 2.6 million over 20 years to have this property fully paid off. If the property was worth 2.6, it's grown 3.9. So if you were to sell it, you would have to sell it probably for a lot higher than 2.6 to justify the total payments you've put into your loan. And that simply means you don't want to put yourself in a position that you're going to make this monthly commitment, get a R1 million loan, pay 2.6 million in total, and you sell the property in 20 years for 2.4, which means that it doesn't justify you to buy the property and run it for that long. You might as well sell it before the bond is settled. Or if we use the same example of 2,811, you've now put extra money in, you've paid it off, you've now reduced it to 10.83. So the total repayments is 1.4. So you only need a growth of 0.81% on your value of the property. In other words, you could quite easily, if you were to pay this property off in 10 years and you bought it for 1.2 purchase price, you should be able to sell this property quite comfortably for well above 1.4 because this has only grown 0.81. So if inflation was 6% and you compounded your property's growth by 6% over 10 years, and you'd say you sold it for 2.1 million, 2.1 million minus 1.4, justifies all the payments you've made into this property. Look, obviously, you've also made additional payments over here, but you've saved the interest by doing that. That's where you benefit by putting extra money into this property, is the interest. If you sell this property in 10 years for, say, 2 million or 2.2 as an example, you've recouped all the money that you put towards this finance already. Obviously, by putting extra money in, you've saved an extra portion of interest that you would have paid if you'd not done that. But this whole exercise here is to see the feasibility of a primary residence, to justify, should I buy this primary residence? If I want to pay it off in a certain amount of time, how do I do so? And this is the template that you would use to sort of forecast that for you. The only thing that it can't do, obviously, because it's in the future, I've made a note here. The amortization schedule is a planning tool. However, the interest rate may change throughout the bond term, and therefore total interest or saved may not be 100% accurate. This total interest saved here is based on 11.75%. So just by changing one metric here, I'm going to change this to 10 points. So I'm just going to show the total interest is 1.6 million. If I go change this by 1% in reduction, you see it comes by 200,000 in total interest, because obviously you've now reduced your interest portion of the loan by bringing down the interest rate. So in reality, as I mentioned, you're going to get a monthly statement with the bank with the monthly interest rate that has been applied, because it does change. And then they'll have their own amortization schedule based on that interest rate going into the future. But this is just purely if you want to speculate before you buy a property, how can you pay it off a lot sooner based on a few variables that one would just factor in when they're making the decision. So I hope this video does give a bit more clarity. I do have a separate video, separate template for vehicle amortization. Vehicle amortization does differ because there is balloon payments and residuals that are applied. It doesn't work the same as a home loan. And also their loan term is a lot less. It's generally up to 72 months as the maximum term that one would be able to get finance for a vehicle. A property, the maximum finance one can get is 30 years or 360 payments. So obviously the loan on a primary residence is going to take a lot longer to pay off. There's a lot more implications with interest, etc. So if you have any comments, please feel free to make them in the section below. Like this video if you find this to be of any value. And lastly, if you'd like to purchase this template, I'll put the link in the description where you can purchase this from Etsy and use it for yourself when you are planning for purchasing your for primary residence. Thanks for now. Ciao.